Hello，大家好，欢迎大家来到读书时间。我们今天继续读《Soft Hearts》Rett Swinson Mystery 这本书。好，我们现在开始。I went through the same process for the Fosters and for Skip Green. Nothing. I concluded that if Wanda really did have dirt on the people who had invaded her lawn, the internet probably wasn't where she found it. I googled Wanda too. The first listing to pop up was a website that students used to rate their professors. Wanda's scores and comments from students were all over the map. From boring as hell, who cares about this English poetry stuff? Poetry stuff. Pottery. Who cares about this English pottery stuff? To such a kind and supportive teacher, best class I've had at Tech. I noted that the most recent entries were consistently grim, very serious or gloomy, unattractive or forbidding. Unapproachable. Continually AWOL from class and when she's there, constantly betrays students. Don't even bother with this one. And what a horrible person. What rock did she crawl out from under? The scores for her final semester of teaching were in the basement. The comments basically tracked what everyone else had testified to. A personality that had come apart, a disintegration. I went to YouTube and did a search. After many dead ends, I finally found a video from a symposium on romantic poetry from 5 years earlier. A panel discussion what Wanda was part of. The topic, are the romantics still relevant today? The moderator was a personality from a local public radio station. His first few questions were fielded many by the other two panelists who produced. Your first few questions were fielded many who produced an impenetrable jargon. I had to remind myself that these were experts in their field who were presenting to other scholars, not to general audience. Even the radio host, older, perhaps less and more less be filled with love for less enamored of literature, literary theory, seemed to be getting a little frustrated as he turned to Wanda for the first time. Moderator, let's back up a little. Why do we think romanticism saw the success it did when it did? Miss Hightower, we haven't heard from you. Any thoughts? Wanda, thank you, I will try. Wanda was poised, calm, pleasant, was poised, having a composed and self-assured manner. Pause. She wore her signature elegant to the elbow gloves. Shyly, she pulled the microphone closer to herself. Wanda, in early 18th century England, unless you were landed gentry, people of good social position, especially the class of people next below the nobility in position and birth, upper class. You probably lived on a farm. You didn't own the land your family lived on, but you worked it. You probably couldn't read very well, and even if you could, you didn't have the time to read very much. In terms of what you choose to believe, you likely looked outside yourself for your opinions, to church leaders or to the educated owner of your land, because your own education was extremely limited. However, later in the 1700s, factories began luring more and more people to the cities. Education for the average person became easier to come by. By the end of that century, books began being published at an amazing rate. Prior to that, authors would typically write from some authorities, referring scripture, what passed for science, or citing the wise thinkers who came before them. The Romantic poets, however, shifted the central point of reference. They followed their own hearts and minds to see what they could discover. Appalled, greatly dismayed or horrified. Shock. Appalled by the dark satanic muse of London. They looked for meaning in Earth's natural beauty, in the mythologies of collection of in the mythologies of Greece, in the mythology of Greece and Rome, and in childhood innocence. In short, they searched for a purity in this world that they could locate and express through beautiful language. Moderator. They searched for purity in the world that they could locate and express through beautiful language. Moderator. You make them sound almost religious, Wanda. Not particularly religious, but certainly spiritual. The Romantics were the opposite of unbelievers. In fact, they were idealists, almost to a fault, who longed from connection connection to spirit. Lodin. Have a strong wish or desire. As a result, we get John Keats' shepherd, chef hero, chief hero, shepherd, chief hero, shepherd, chief hero, and the who chases Greek goddess through 4,000 lines of poetry, and a different sort of seeker. Mary Shelley's Dr. Frankenstein, who attempts to bring a corpse back to life. In both cases, there is a strong curiosity about the supernatural and a fervent attempt to connect to something that transcends. Fervent attempt. Heavy and display of hot burning or glow. Fervent attempt. Fervent, and a fervent attempt to connect to something that transcends our suffering world. Poetry as a prayer, you might say. It might be helpful to remember that life 2 centuries ago was way more of a struggle. The average life expectancy in England 1800 was 40, half of what it is today. Those who lived long lives invariably saw dozens of close friends and family die. Invariably. In very close, even every occasion. In every case or on every occasion, always. Invariably. Saw dozens of close friends and family die. Who wouldn't wish to transcend such grief? Moderator. I understand what you're saying, but honestly, I grew up thinking about the Romantics as sort of hippies before their time. You know, free love, opium, revolution. One that, yes, there was plenty of that, but I think theirs was a more legitimate impulse than the hippies. I mean, the 1960s couldn't last, right? 1960s China couldn't last, right? Bacchanal, wild and drunken celebration. Bacchanal, the 1960s Bacchanal couldn't last, right? Yesterday's hippies have 401ks today. The Romantics, however, saw much more sustainable, radicalization of the mind and the spirit. Radicalization. The action process causing someone to adopt a radical position on political or social issues. Sustainable. Moderator. Carpe diem. Seize the day. Seize everyone every day. Seize the day. Want a yes and experience eternity by fully apprehending the world we live in. By fully apprehend. The other panelists fielded the next few questions, but I found myself skipping ahead to Wanda's next opportunity to speak. 好，谢谢大家，我们今天先读到这里吧，那我们下次再见了，拜拜。